Okay, now, I have never worked off of notes before, but it's never too late to get organized. So, my friend Joe here, and actually I haven't known him for all that long,
No.
but I've known his family from day one because of our both families were both in the same church.
That's right.
And you start off with your, how young are you today?
Well, right now I'm 91, but I'm getting close to, too damn close to 92.
Okay, all right, all right. Now, where were you
The
born?
50th of the next month I'll be 92.
Where were you born, young man?
Nanaimo, the old General Hospital in Nanaimo. I was delivered by Dr. Larry Givondo.
Well, I was born there too. I didn't see you there.
Yeah, but you were a lot later than me, Mike. You missed the train.
Okay, okay. Now you were raised, you told me a story, you were raised by your grandparents. Is that a fact?
For quite a few years, yes, because of the circumstance of my parents. My dad was moving different jobs and working up islands, so they'd just keep me neutralized. They left me with my grandparents, yes.
I heard you were neutered. You say you're neutralized. I heard you were neutered. Anyhow, here's the story. Okay. Now you were telling me that you got away with a lot as a kid because your grandmother was deaf, so you could use the big four-letter words without getting in trouble.
Stone deaf. When I started school, I was still living with my grandparents. I went to the old Bayview School in Nanaimo, the one up on the hill. You know where it's at.
Yes.
And of course, kids would all get together, come to my house, and we'll do something. And I'd bring the kids to the house, and I was going to be the big shot. So I'd walk in the house, and I'd stand there and curse and swear at my grandmother. And my friends, their eyes were as big as dog balls. And I was doing all this. My grandmother was still working away. And, I was a pretty important guy there for a while.
Okay, well that's different than me because my father didn't have good hearing because he worked in the shipyards in Seattle during the war. And what's the fellow out of the airport there, Collishaw?
Yes.
Collishaw. Well, Ray Collishaw, as you know, or may not know, shot down more planes than any other aviator in the history of the world.
I've read something about
68
that. Yes.
to his credit. Well, my father worked with Ray's brothers and his father in the shipyards in Seattle during the war. They working as Liberty ships, you know.
Yes.
And he tells an interesting story that when Ray came back from the war, my father said, Ray, must have been quite an experience. And they did it, by the way, right on Bruce Avenue, right on the corner of Bruce and Fourth.
Oh yeah,
Excuse
right,
me, Bruce
yeah.
and Sixth, a little house there. They were born there. But he told my dad, he said, I didn't really think it was that big a deal because he said, what I would do is get a blanket and a heavy aviation coat and take some aspirins and I'd go as high as I possibly could. My head, I thought was going to explode. And just wait till 1 or 2 German planes were below me, never 3. And then I could dive bomb and take the first one out, just completely obliterate him. And with my speed, I could whip around before he could get the second one, go back and drink some beer. I've done my duty for the day.
Yeah.
And of course, he died as an old man with his boots on in Vancouver. And he also went to the Soviet Union after the war and did some mercenary work. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
But I've call it mercenary. What? It's not probably fit in his thing. If you go to somewhere and you believe in a cause, and if they want to pay, well, that's okay. Everybody's got to get paid. But anyhow, he was quite a lad, and my father said that his brothers and his dad were nice people, but very weird. Like one time they got a Sunday off and they went to the park, and Ray's brothers and fathers grabbed this swan, and they grabbed it and they tied a knot in his neck. And the old man said, if you get caught doing that, you're going to go to jail. Why the hell would you do that? And why would you do that? And the old man said, well, we just always wondered if he could.
Yeah, yeah.
So they're just
curiosity.
They were a bit unusual.
Yeah, curiosity, Mike. People's curiosity. Everybody's a little bit different, you know.
Well,
yeah, you bet.
I'm sure the Goose would have a different opinion about that. And he told me one time that you got lost and your mother had mixed emotions when you did get home.
Yeah, we during the Second World War, they sent my dad to the Queen Charlotte Islands to when they're logging the airplane spruce. At that time, we lived in Comox, so we moved from Comox. We went to Queen Charlotte's, Port Clements for about 4.5 years. I went to school there, and anyway, to make a long story short, I loved being around the water, and we lived very close to water, so I built a raft. And one day I was, after school, I got out on my raft, paddled around, catching a few fish and crabs, doing the thing. And it was raining and snotting, a terrible day. And I got pretty late. And so I come in the house, after I finished, I come home, and I was dripping, soaking wet, like a drowned rat. And my mother was really frantic. She thought I was never come home, I guess. I thought I drowned or something. I don't know what was going on in her mind, but she was so excited that when I walked in the door and so excited to see me, she was cooking supper. She had the breadboard in her hand, and she whacked me on the top of the head and broke the freaking breadboard. I was okay, but it was tough on the breadboard. I mean, my poor mom, yeah, she was a great lady.
Yeah, that's a really good story.
My mom was one of my best friends with my mother.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
My mother and I never got along, and until the last year of her life, and then she became very liberal, and she really at that time, and I'm going back now, 60 years, and even then she was saying, "How are the young people going to get a house now with the price then?" And those days you could buy a new house for 16 or 17,000. How are they ever going to get the money to buy a house? You know, she felt very sorry about young people. They just couldn't see how they were going to be able to get something, you know, with the inflation the way it was. So this, what we're experiencing now, is nothing new. Now, you've had so many jobs in your life, it's incredible. But can you remember your first job?
Well, my first job, it was in the city of Nanaimo. We lived on Bradley Street, and my first job was delivering groceries on my bicycle, a big front carrier on my bike, and I delivered groceries for Cochran and Campbell on the corner of Rose Hill and the Old Island Highway. That's the first job I ever had. And of course, I delivered papers in Nanaimo, burnt most of them, and flyers from Cochran and Campbell. I would always, every day, once a week, they have all the flyers come up for all the sales. And so I hooked my mother in to help him. He could be a conspirator in this thing. And so I get all these things, I deliver a few, and then I go home and say, "Mom, you got to get rid of these for me." So she just burn them in the fireplace. Save me a lot of work.
You know, it's funny about delivering newspapers, because that was the big thing when you were a kid. Can you be a newspaper? Can you get a newspaper route?
Oh, I had a newspaper too, yes, I did.
I mentioned to my dad one night, and he said, "Well, you're not going to deliver newspapers." And I thought, why would he say that? I said, "Why?" And he said, "I'll tell you why. Because for one thing, it costs more for your shoes than you get paid for delivering newspapers for a month. For another thing, the newspaper company has a policy. If someone skips out on you, you had to collect every month.
That's correct.
$1.25, whatever it was. And if those people
correct.
Didn't pay you, or they left town or moved away, you got stuck for that entire money and come off your thing. So he said, that's no deal at all. Plus, you'll wear out more shoes than they pay you. So you can't do that. So I thought, well, now what am I going to do? So me and a guy named Johnny McGlinchey, and who was actually quite a nice guy, and he had a drink, he turned into a complete monster when he had a drink. So anyhow, him and I, you know, he's one of those guys that, you know, at school somebody would say, "Give me your lunch money or I'll bite your foot off." Your foot off. Yeah. And you had to believe him, because he always had a piece of gumboot hanging out the corner of his mouth, you see. But anyhow, he was that guy. So we got the bright idea to go up to the newspaper shack where everybody got their papers delivered up in Harewood there, at Lee's property.
Okay.
And what we did is we shook them down. We said, if you give us, I think it was $1 a month or 50 cents a month, or a one pop a week, which was 7 cents, no one will steal your newspapers. Otherwise, you're liable to get here and half your newspapers are gone, right?
Yeah.
Now what are you going to do? Yeah. Or maybe there's some bullies around here that would beat the crap out of you. We'll make sure that didn't happen. So what we had is a shakedown, and everybody did that, and they were all quite happy to pay the pop or the $1 a month or something, and we'd collect it or whatever it was, and yeah, that's what we did. What would you call? What do they call? There's a word for that now. It's a mafia word. We shake down all the merchants.
Well, just a shakedown, Mike. That's what it is.
Yeah. And so we thought that was pretty ingenious.
Well, do you remember where we used to pick up our old newspapers right next to the Bastion, there was a building going between the Bastion and the post office. There's a building that was Schwartz's
Studio.
studio.
Yep.
Next door to that's where we used to pick up our papers at nights, yes.
Yeah.
Or during the, every day. Pick them up there and they take them into town and deliver them, yeah.
Did you have protection? Was anybody ever give you protection?
No, I just thought I was all by myself. Well, just with my friends, but when delivered paper, I was always by myself.
That thing about intimidation, that's a really tough thing. I don't know if you know this, but I've had a lot to do with the Nanaimo Boxing Club with Les Varro and Helen Varro. Wonderful, wonderful people. They're still around. And we had such a thing there, and I used to sponsor it called Ringside Rescue. And what would happen if a single mother had a child or a number of children and they were being intimidated at school and bullied at school, just phone us and we pick the young fellow up, bring him to the boxing club and teach him to defend himself. And more than that, we had a few RCMP members at that time, and they would, if some kid threatened them, then the RCMP would get involved. But for a kid that's going to school every day and getting beaten up and picked on and bullied every day, to come to the club, not only could he learn how to defend himself, but they're all his friends. All these guys that are training and everything, they're all his brothers, they're all his friends. And I really, really, really think that helped the community a lot. That was a really good program, and that finally phased out in the end, but it was a really good thing, because that going to school and being intimidated like that, kids actually commit suicide, They commit suicide. Yeah. My son David tells me this story about this young fellow, and he was a kind of a wimpy guy, but that's okay, that's who he is. And this guy used to smack him every day, smack him in the head, smack him in the back of the head. So David had a guy that played bass for him, Todd Sackerty. And I'm not mentioning his name to give Todd credit. And one day Todd said to the guy, look, you smack this guy around every day, and I don't like it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to smack you every day. And he started off right now, and he gave him a big whack. And I just want to deafen the guy. And they did it for about a week. Well, the guy moved to another school, right? Yeah. But it was good. That was it was like instant karma. How would you like to come to school and get beat up all the time? I didn't have that problem for two reasons. I had 4 older brothers in the same school, and especially my brother Eddie and Ronnie. They're real warriors. Yeah. And the other one is I belonged to Chemainus Boxing Club since I was 5 years old. So I didn't look for fights, but I didn't avoid them either.
Well, I know a little story here. Speaking of boxing, we moved to Cumberland for quite a while. My dad was working up. My dad actually sold insurance, got into selling insurance. But anyway, going to Cumberland. I'm not a very big person. I'm pretty small. And there used to be a guy on the corner when I used to walk by. I forget his name now. We lived on Maryport Avenue. And he quite often would be kind of mean to me, but I could always outrun him or get away from him somewhere. So my dad took the steps. He sent me off to some minor friend of his who was a pretty good boxer. He lived out in Bevan, and this guy taught me how to box a little bit. Yeah. So I got pretty proficient at it. And I remember coming home one day, and I was walking back to my house up on Maryport Avenue, and I walked by this guy's house. And he came out and he was going to accost me. And I said, yeah, well, let's get at her. And I punched the crap right out of him. And that's the last time I ever seen that. He never bothered me again. This old miner showed me how to box. It was pretty good.
I remember you had another boxing lessons when you went to Vancouver. Was it the Brothers College? What was the college there?
Vancouver College. Yeah. That was not a lesson. That was not a lesson in boxing. That was a lesson in manners and a message in a lot of things in life. Okay. You get smart in the classroom with the brothers, and when the classroom was over, you go to the gym with them, with the teacher. Brother Ryan, I believe it was Brother Ryan. He was a big guy too. Take you to the gym, put the gloves on, and whack. You just do your best to stand up, because when the lesson was over, it was just carried on the same.
Imagine doing that now in a public school.
Yeah, no, it was interesting. It was a boarding school, and my parents sent me there for a couple of years.
When I went to school, I went to St. Anne's here in Nanaimo for 8 years, and then they changed it from grade 1 to university entrance, which we used to call the old grade 13. Yep. After that, they changed it just from 1 to 8. I don't know whether it's because I was going into grade 9 or not. I hate to think they closed that to get rid of me, but I went to public school for the first time. And, I guess a lot of guys there thought, oh, this kid's from a religious school and, he'll be a wimp and all the rest of it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that didn't work very good for them at all. And so they all had to try me on. And then I got called down the office by the vice principal saying, you can't come here from a private school and come here and take out your animal instincts on people. Animal instincts, a lot of these guys, even in grade 9 or 10, they just got out of Brand Lake jail.
Yeah.
But we had some dandies, and I remember one guy who was particularly tough. He just got out of jail, and he looked mean, and we were throwing spitballs around, and I was sitting behind him, and he threw one at him, and he kept ducking down, it hit me. So the next time I said, enough of this BS. And so he said, well, what are you going to do about it? So I knew he was tough. So I just reached down and pulled his chair upside down and just wailed on him. Didn't even give him a chance.
Yeah.
So that got called down the office again. The same big lecture. They're going to throw me out. And then the guy was tough. He came in the bathroom after me, and he came in there and he said, you didn't give me a chance. And I just picked, you used to have rat tail combs. Remember the rat tail combs?
That's correct, yes.
And I just said, you got a chance right now, a chance to lose an eye. And that was it.
Oh my God! Yeah.
But it was rough. It was rough. And I met a guy named Orville Boyd in grade 10. And Orville was a Golden Gloves boxing champion. And he was one of those kids when he was 12 years old. He was 5'10" and 190 pounds, And he could really fight. So he knew who I was because he had seen me in the boxing circuit, and I knew who he was. So I approached him and I said, listen, if we ever fight Orville, somebody's going to lose. And they will agree on that. He says, yep. And I said, so if we get together, nobody can fool with us, And he said, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
And we become instant friends.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was never a real scrapper or anything. I just get in the odd fight once in a while. But I can remember talking about schools. When I went to John Shaw High here in the Nanaimo, the old John Shaw High.
I do.
Yeah. You had, it was 1, 2, 3 flights of stairs, and they're on the outside of the building to get from one floor to the other.
Yeah.
And each one had a landing on it. And I can remember that we would, a couple of us guys would get to the top landing with condoms, would fill them full of ink, and wait for somebody to go, holy shit. That was not a good. Then of course you had to get in front of old J.B. Litch, and J.B. could give the strap better than anybody I ever seen in my life. Honestly, he was good at it. And the other time was we had my art teacher in the school when I went John Shaw was Ozzie Wardle.
Yeah.
Because Ozzie was a little bit little bit flaky.
Yeah.
And anytime it was me and my buddy were messing around, it says out in the hallway he's going to give us the strap. He was going to give us the strap. I held the hands out and he whacked us a couple of times. And with my mouth, I says, "Hey, Ozzie, is that the best you can do?" Up to see JB, and that was words I should never have said because it wasn't good when I got to JB's office.
Do you know? I'll tell you something about Litch.
God.
I'll tell you something about him. When I was in grade 10 up there, was the last year I was at school, left by popular demand. And when I went to see Litch one day, I said, he said something about being late or something. He said, if I had a driver's license, I could drive myself from the farm and that, but my mother's a little reluctant and stuff. So I wonder if you'd advise her in a letter that it would be beneficial for my education if I did have a license. And so he did.
Oh, did he? Yeah.
To my surprise, he did. He really did. Oh. But I talked about getting the strap. At the Catholic school down there, the head nun down there, she did not believe in any type of punishment like that, and neither did Father Hanley. Now, if you did something really stupid, that you had to go see Father Hanley, and of course he would say, "How's your brother? How's your dad? How's the farm? And how's the logging going? And oh, by the way, what are you doing here? Why are you here? Screwed up again, did you?" And then he'd say, "Is there anything bothering you, like at home or emotionally or anything like that?" And I said, "Well, not much. No. Okay, fine." And next time we come down, I'll give you a kick in the ass. How's that? And he was the most easygoing guy in the world. So when I got to the public school, we had a real mean teacher. And I won't even mention his name because it doesn't matter. But I had a buddy, and Reg Irving, and we were cheating on a test, a metalwork test. And I knew nothing about metalwork because at the Catholic school, you're not taught that.
Yeah.
It's just, you don't do what they call the whatever arts. So anyhow, we got caught, and he took poor Reggie, and he went and put his shirt sleeves up like this, and he strapped him across here as hard as he could with a custom strap he had. And Reg had the veins were just sticking out of his wrists, and he said, "Oh, it's your turn, Mr. Gogo." And I said, "It's your turn to F off." And I didn't say F off. You know what I said?
No, I know what you said, Mike.
And he said, "What?" And I said, "You heard me, you son of a bitch."
Yeah.
And so down to the office there, and the guy's name was the principal's name. I won't even mention any names. He was a good guy, and he was ex-military. You'd think that was bad, but it wasn't. And he had seen a lot of trauma in his day, and he had shell shock. So I told him what happened. He said, "Well, the problem is that he doesn't understand that you come from an environment where they don't have that punishment.
Yeah.
And it's all psychological. It's all you use your mind, you punish your mind, you straighten it out." And he understood it. So I was landing in his office pretty often.
Yeah.
And he said, "Look," he said, "don't quit school." He said, "Don't quit school. If you have to move your desk into my office, I don't care. Just don't quit school."
Yeah.
And he was great because I had a Model A, and I'd bring it down from the farm, and I'd park it in the school thing. There was no license plate. I wasn't even old enough to have a license.
Yeah, really.
And he said, "That could be a problem for me." He said, "But if you park it on the side of the road, that's fine. I'm not going to bother with it, whatever it is." So he was really good. But there were some really mean teachers. There was one guy who used to like going up behind and hitting people. In boxing, even martial arts, you're not allowed to touch the back of a person's head.
Okay.
And there's a reason for that. It's your brainstem and that. But he used to delight in smacking guys in the back of the head with a book as hard as he could.
Oh, yeah.
He was a real mean one.
Yeah, I've had teachers used to throw chalk at me, just like to sound like missiles coming at you.
There was a guy.
The brushes where you have the boards.
And
I had the boards. You'd be doing it. And of course, when the teacher had his back to you, sometimes, you'd being a little bit Fruit Loopish, you'd do stupid things, because they haven't got eyes in the back of their head, But I'm sure some teachers did have eyes in their back of their head. I had a teacher once, Mr. Paulson. He'd be up at the board doing something, and we'd be messing around in school, and all of a sudden you look up, and here's a brush coming. The brush for the boards.
Yeah.
He'd just pivot around and just fire that thing, and it'd come at you like a missile.
Don't have me knock somebody's eye out. That might be a problem,
Oh,
I'll tell you one more about school, and then we'll move on. I was walking in the hallway at school in grade 10, and that was my last year. And I was walking down the hallway, and the students in front of me were changing classes, so I didn't want to shove by them. So somebody behind me stepped on my Achilles tendon, like hard. I thought it was just some guy horsing around. Well, he's big, a moron. Forget that. And all of a sudden, I got it again. Ooh, really hard. So I thought, "Oh, that's not funny." And whoever it is getting it. So I just turned around and fired as hard as I could, nailed the guy right in the throat.
Yeah.
Guess who it was? It was a teacher.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he was a real bantam rooster, little son of a gun.
Yeah.
And he just thought he could get away with that. And I got it right in the throat. Down he went like a ton of crap. And I thought, well, could be in trouble now. Maybe not. And there was another teacher, Mel Blackman. Even he was a black man. He was from Jamaica. I remember his first class. "My name is Mel Blackman." And he'd grin at you. He was Jamaican,
really?
he was black.
Yeah.
And he happened to be standing there, saw it all. So, of course, the teacher that got nailed, he said, "I'm going to, put you in jail and all this stuff." And Mel said, he had that Jamaican accent. He said, "I would not make an issue of this if I were you. I saw everything, and I think you caused all the trouble. Michael, get in the classroom and sit in your desk."
That was it.
Good old Mel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where were we now?
One thing before we go, I would like to say with the interview,
Yeah.
one of the best teachers I ever had in my life was Mr. Foster. He was a great guy, and he was my last teacher in school in grade 9, and school and I just didn't work out, so I left school fairly early in grade 9, and But I always remember Mr. Foster. He was one of the better ones. Yeah, yeah. He was a really good teacher. Yeah.
My best teacher that I liked at public school was a guy named Joe Popple, and he was from England. And he was a really good guy. He taught English, and he was a very, very funny guy. And I remember one day he was quite shocked because we were looking out the window, and some guy come along on his bike. You could see him along Waikas Avenue, and one of the kids in the school said, "Oh, there's so and so, the old scab." And the guy said, "Why do you call him that?" And that goes to the mining days, right?
Yes. Yes.
And you know all
yes,
about that.
Yes.
And so anyhow, he said, "Whoa, surely you're not going back all that time." And half the class shouted out, "Yes, we are. We'll get them." You know, like it was just so much of that still in the community.
Yes, there was.
Yeah. In fact, I was no different because I was in Vancouver one time and somebody needed a ride, some lawyer, and I said, "Well, come with me in the cab. We're going there." And then he said some remark about those idiots from Nanaimo with the coal mining mentality. And I just opened the door and just shoved him right out the street. Out he went.
My old granddad, Joe Nixon, was a coal miner.
One day I said to my dad, you know, there was an incident where somebody threw a bomb in the guy's window, some scab's window, and I said, you know, he's probably just he had to feed his family and stuff, and he was probably hungry. My old man looked at me and said he was no hungrier than we were.
No.
So that was pretty bitter.
My old granddad, he was one of the bigger, my life, he was one of the biggest influence on my life still is for a lot of years, because he was such a gentle, good man, my grandpa. Yeah.
Okay, now we've got something in common. Apparently, we've got we think it's funny to urinate on different things. Now, when you were in one of your first logging jobs,
Port Renfrew.
Tell them about urinating on the locomotive.
Okay, when I left school, first job I ever had, I went to Port Renfrew, and I got to start as a whistle punk and worked my way up the ranks till I finally got working on everything was steam in those days, steam locomotives. And if you're familiar with the locomotive at all, there's the engine and all this stuff, but the thing in the front where the smokestack comes out is what they call the firebox. And when you got that thing gets red hot when you're pulling up a grade, or going downhill, or whatever it was, that thing was always red hot. And just to antagonize everybody that was working with me, we'd be going, especially downhill, if we're going at a pretty good rate, because everything blows back into the cab of the locomotive. I'd get up and pee on the smoke box. And that just drove everybody nuts. It's lucky I'm here today, because a lot of people wanted to kill me over this episode, but I was pretty quick on my feet and they never did catch me.
Well, it's something that gets really, I know it's a hell of a smell, because when my parents went on Saturday, they went shopping, in the wintertime, my 4 older brothers would throw me down the stairs into the basement and request that I fill up the furnace with firewood. And, also put, those days you had the vapor pan, right? You open the vapor pan and you put a couple of quarts of water into that.
Correct.
So anyhow, I used to think it was hilarious that I'd piss in the vapor pan and stink them out of the house. Of course, they knew right away it was, and then I was in for another good cuffing.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Good Lord.
You learn to fight when you got 4 older brothers, because all your sparring partners are twice as big as you, right?
I never had that problem. No.
Okay, what was your first pay? Can you remember in logging camp, your first pay?
When logging camp went to Port Renfrew, at Bear Creek, I would believe I was getting $1.10 or $1.10 or $1.15 an hour. Yeah. Paid $2.50 a day for board, but a pair of cork boots was only $19, and you worked an 8-hour day, and so I guess all in all and the food in camp was good, always good accommodations, and that actually was a big learning curve for me to get on in life with things the way they happen, and dealing with, because I'm just a snot-nosed punk. I was only 15 years old, 16 years old when I first went to work in the woods. So there's a lot of heavy work, and made lots of mistakes, but I did all right.
Well, you were a high-paid guy, because My first job was working in a bowling alley when I was 13, and you got 5 cents a game to
Okay.
set pins.
Yeah.
And in this late spring, you didn't get many people coming down when the weather warmed up. It was
Oh.
kind of a wintertime thing.
Yeah.
So I couldn't get 20 games in. So if you couldn't get 20 games in, you couldn't make $1. So I took the job on as janitor, and I had to clean the bathrooms, wax the thing, clean out the cigarette thing, the ashtrays, the whole bit,
Yeah.
and put the pop bottles away for $1 a night.
Yeah. That's
So
yeah.
I got $1 a night, and
Wow.
I had to I rode my bicycle from 5th Street to where the Great National Building is, with the pigmy
Yes.
lanes.
Yes.
And I wanted to keep my bike in the warehouse there, and the old bugger that owned it, he wouldn't let me bring my bike in. So one night I
Was
organized.
it Shelby Saunders?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a mean old bugger.
Yeah,
I'll
he
tell you
was.
that.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. But
So now, one of your credits is that you were one of the, you worked for Emil Anderson Construction, which a lot of people don't know, but they do really big jobs like the Coca-Cola Highway, jobs in Peru, Chile, stuff like that, big construction jobs. And you got a job with them, and you were the superintendent on that Coca-Cola Highway.
yes, I was. Yes. Yes, I was. I was superintendent on two different projects there at oh God, I can't get my. Here's my mind's gone. Larson Hill, and what's that first creek coming out of on the Coquihalla? Just out of Hope. That was the first job I did. Yes. Yeah.
Now, you were saying that, like 2 years ago or something, they had a couple of really bad washouts there. And you were
Yeah.
saying that when we built that, you thought it was actually overbuilt.
Well, I would say it was a well-constructed highway. I would, if I know how with it was. It was a well-built highway, and something the province needed for a long, long time. And I was quite amazed when I seen the amount of destruction from that flood. I thought that would never happen in the Coquihalla, honestly.
Well, of course, and now we're getting these record floods, and the force of water is incredible.
Oh.
It's just incredible.
Water is so powerful, just unbelievable
Yeah,
pressure
and
of
it
water.
hammers down there 24 hours a day.
Yes, yes,
And
it does.
up there, when you were doing that job, you got a chance to meet with such dignitaries as our friend Phil Gaglardi,
Yeah.
Flying Phil, as they call him, Flying Phil.
No, I never met Phil. Actually,
You never met him?
No, I just know young Bill Bennett.
Yeah.
He came on the toured our site, the job one day I was looking after. He come up and toured the job, and we had actually quite a conversation. Found him a very interesting man, very down to earth. Didn't seem like a politician to me. No, I don't want to point fingers at you.
He's not there. He's not a part of it.
Oh yeah, and anyway, I thought he just talked and good guy to talk to. Very very enjoyable talking to him.
You were a big fan of his father.
Yes, I was. Wacky.
Yeah.
Best thing ever happened to BC.
Well,
Yeah.
I remember those years
Yeah,
when I
yeah.
was a young fellow.
Yeah,
and
Phil
boy, the
Gaglardi.
North, like Terrace, Kitimat, Prince
Yeah.
George. Oh
Oh.
man, you
Yep.
go up there and those places were just alive.
Oh,
I think
man,
at one time the average age of the person in Prince George was 26.
Yeah, it was amazing, Mike. Yeah, it was. It was just the North Country. He develops old man Bennett. He developed so much for this province. We would still be in Stone Ages if it wasn't for him, I think.
Well,
But-
they talk about this and that, and of course he was billed as a conservative, which he wasn't, because he took over BC Ferries. He started that. Before that was Blackball Ferry Lines.
That's
right?
correct. Yes,
And
it
then
was.
he took over Kootenai Power and everything and became a BC Hydro.
BC Hydro. That's
so
correct.
I would say he was a lot closer to a socialist than he was a conservative. But he had
Yeah.
conservative policies, and
Yeah.
he didn't mind people making money either. Like, I mean, wages were great then, and then he took some action against a Swede there. I thought his name was, I forget his name now, but he was a Swedish guy, and he came to BC and lots of money, and he was going to take over Prince George and pulp mills and stuff. And he did not live up to what he said he was, and he got the boot right out of the province. Do you
Well,
remember
yeah,
that?
because those guys are just speculators, Mike, and they're out to. I mean, the country's full of them right now. Like they're all over the place. We still have them, Mike, but
Oh, definitely.
it
It just keeps going.
yeah.
And that was that. So now, just a little note here. food in camps, like food in the camps. What some guys abuse their privileges of camp, and tell me about that. You were telling me about the abuse of the food. 'Cause
Well,
we just never put up with that. If we're raised the way we were, we didn't waste any food.
that's all correct. And um, you know, when I got to be in good management and have my own camps and that, I used to sit in camp, watch a lot of this, and I did before I got to that point. But they just watch this, you know, people food time, because the biggest thing when you're running a camp anywhere, usually your biggest problem is the food. They're always complaining about the food. There's always a meeting, union meeting. The food's no good. This is no good, and all that kind of stuff. But it's always the food. And I've seen guys go in there complaining about the food. The next day there'll be steak night, and the company we had good caterers, and it was always good food. And it always one steak night once a week we had steak night, and it was a T-bone steak. I would see people go in, grab a T-bone steak, cut the tenderloin out of it, eat the tenderloin, put the rest aside, and go back for one, maybe sometimes 2 more steaks, and just take the tenderloin out of them. And then the next day you'll be having a meeting with them because they're complaining about the food.
Yeah, you know,
Ridiculous.
the other side of that steak is in New York, right? That's a New York cut. I used to be in the meat business.
Oh,
But yeah, that's a New York steak wasn't good enough for them. But I'll tell you a funny story about food. We were working down in Duncan, and we were logging a place in Maple Bay for a wonderful man, and they were the Elkington brothers. And one of them was Dr. E.H.W. Elkington, Colonel retired, and spent 10 years in the Soviet Union and 10 years in India. He actually operated on Gandhi's eyes. He was an eye surgeon in the army.
Really?
Yeah, but we're logging for them, and there was a place that is still there, I guess, the Silver Bridge Inn in Duncan. And
Oh, yeah.
They had a lunch there, smorgy thing. It was about, in those days, I think it was $1.80 or something, and to go there. So we took the whole crew. It would be about 10 of us there every day, and of course they ate like men condemned.
Yeah.
And so they, there was one guy that he would leave food, and we said, "You can't do that." "What do you mean? It's all one." No. If you leave food on the plate again, you stay in the landing. You don't come with us.
Yeah.
Anyhow, the guy was certainly making any money on us, and we felt sorry for him. But there was 2 owners, and one would treat us very well and welcome us, and the other guy would do everything he could to disparage us from coming in there because of our appetites.
Yeah.
Or racist, at least. So anyhow, after working there for 4 months, we thought, this poor guy is not making any money. I was losing money. So my brother and I decided to give him $500. Now, $500, and I'm going back 55 years. $500 was an appreciable
Holy
amount of
crap.
money. So
Year's wages.
we cut him a check for $500 on the proviso that it only go to him and not his partner. And he said, "Well, I never take you guys serious anyways, because for every guy like you that comes in and eats 3 pounds of something, there's some lady comes in with her hair dyed blue and she has a piece of lettuce and is quite happy. So it all works out in the end." But I remember that, giving him the money, but it had to go to him because the other guy wasn't very pleasant.
When you brought up the Silver Bridge, it used to be quite a joke. Us guys, younger guys in Nanaimo years ago, when we were messing around doing stuff, one what to do, and quite often the same was, "Let's go down and park at the Silver Bridge and count Indians."
Well, that did.
I hope you don't have to put that on there, Paul.
No,
it's not
that's
racist,
what they
man.
did, is that, you know,
Just the things we used to do, you know.
I don't like racing history. I think it's just silly.
Yep.
And I know I've heard that 2 years ago there was a musical group going down to Victoria to play, and they were saying, "Okay, let's go down. We'll see how many Indians are on the bridge," because that's what they did.
Yeah, that's right.
They'd come out off there, and they sat there, and cars would go by, or their friends come by, and that's what they did.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
I don't see that as racist.
No, I don't think. No, it's not. I didn't mean it in a racist.
No,
of
I
course
know
not.
that.
No,
I know
no,
that.
no.
That's the way it was.
It's just the way, just in
I
the times the times we lived, it was so much different than what we're living today. It's all black and white, actually. Really, a lot of it.
I spent 11 years working on the reserve. I spent 4 years in Slamming in Powell River. I spent 3 years with Chief down here, Chief Wise, and 3 years on Cooper Island, or they call it Penelican Island now, under Chief James. And we logged there, and we had as many as 27 people working for us. And I don't ever recall us having to let anybody go or any problems whatsoever.
Well, when I went to Renfrew, I got to know a lot of Indians. It was a good sized reserve there at that time when I first went to Renfrew, and I worked with a lot of Indians. Got to know a lot of Indians. Spent some time. Got drunk with some Indians, and I never had any trouble. I thought they're all good people. In fact, I was for a while. They used to have a potlatch on the reserve there at Port Renfrew. Oh, Chief Charlie Jones. I was after his daughter more than anything, but she was a good-looking girl. Yeah. But he used to invite me to the potlatches, and I never seen another white man in the potlatches. I was privy to be to the potlatches.
Well, that happened to me. I was invited down to Cocosila one night, and it was really strange because I thought I would stand out being the token honky. And but I found when they were looking and they were in their thing, they didn't see me. Like if you're conspicuous in a place like that, which obviously was, you get the odd one of these, right? And it didn't happen. No. They just looked straight forward. It was like I wasn't there. Not that they were ignoring me. I didn't get that feeling that they were either staring at me or ignoring me. So it was super cool. Yeah, super cool.
I'll tell you can I tell you one more story?
Well, tell them all you want.
I was here for. One of my best friends in Port Renfrew was Normie Smith, and we were going hunting because I lived at the beach camp for a while at Renfrew, and we were going hunting one time. Got up early in the morning. We had to drive through the reserve because I lived on what they call the San Juan. To make it, geography of Port Renfrew is when you go into Port Renfrew, the San Juan River splits way up above where the Indian Reserve is, and the rivers on both sides. One is the San Juan side, and one is the Gordon River side. And they merge together because the San Juan splits. A lot of people don't know that. They thought it was all one part of the country. But so going from the Port Renfrew side, the town side, we were going across the other side, going the long roads to go hunting. We're driving there one morning, early in the morning, I don't know, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, drive to the reserve and go past a friend of mine, Leonard Jones's place, his house. And here on the house, there's a Chesterfield sitting in the porch, just blazing away, And I thought, holy shit. I said, Normie, we better stop. I hope maybe he doesn't know that he might be all sleeping and going to burn the house. Don't burn everybody up. I got out of the vehicle, walked up the stairs, and you get close to it, and just a racket coming on the inside. Knock on the door, and here comes. They're all drunk and snots in there, eh? Mm-hmm. Oh, it's Joe Fagan. I says, Leonard, your Chesterfield's burning. Oh, Joe, come and have a drink with us. Like, don't worry about the Chesterfield. Get with it, man. I just, but just, I don't know, just good people. A lot of them, really good people.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. But I'll tell you one thing. Now we hear a lot of all the time, everyone's a racist. It just seems everybody's a racist.
Seems to be.
And everybody wants to erase history. I read a thing a while ago about Captain Cook, and I just saw this article, and it was a really long thing on YouTube about Captain Cook. And a really amazing person, an absolutely amazing person in every way. And to see his statue,
that was terrible.
And the police that they're watching that. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people have got a lot of opinion and very little information, and that really does bother me. That thing. But I'll tell you a story. I worked in one of my first jobs was working up at above Campbell River there in what do they call it? That camp there.
Menzies Bay?
No, it was a Baxter Pole worked there. Right. Anyhow, Vernon Camp.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And they worked there for Baxter
in the Neptune Valley.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Right. Okay.
Anyhow, I was only about 17, and a couple of weird things happened, one thing to another. I was up there, and there was a guy, and of course, I just started with 17. There was an old cat skinner up there pulling poles out with a D3. And he kept bugging me, oh, you young punks, you can't work, you can't work. And so, okay, so we the track him off a cat. And we had to bring up the cutting torch and everything to fix it and put a new main bolt and the whole bit in it. So he said, I bet I could beat you up there. You run it with this tank for half the distance up the side. I'll run this thing. I bet I could do it faster. So I went and I ran the first half, and it was a hot day like this, I sweat. And then he got it, and he ran up, about halfway up there, he fell over. And I thought he was pretending he was dead, for a joke. He was dead.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh my goodness gracious.
But yeah, that was
Oh, my
that was
goodness.
a guy named Lou was just a shocked me. I mean,
Yeah,
when you're
good
17,
Lord.
you don't
Yeah.
think that.
Yeah.
So what happened was, I had worked with a guy up there named Bob. He's a native guy, and he has a heck of a good work. So me being a little punky kid, I said to him, you know, Bob, when I get my logging show, I'll hire you because you're a good man. And of course, he just laughed at me, right?
Yeah.
And then years later, I got a job on a reserve, and I thought, I wonder if Bob's still available. So I went down to the reserve and found him. And he said, I'd love to come to work for you. And I said, I'd love to have you. And I took him to another reserve, 40 miles from Nanaimo, and I was so happy to have him. And the second day he was there, I got a phone call. Our guy come to see me in the bushes, said, Chief wants to see you. And I went over there, and I said, what is it? And he says, you know, why did you bring that goddamn Indian onto this reserve? And I said, you mean Bob? He says, yeah. And I said, what do you mean? He says, you know, if you don't get rid of him today, you're down the road and I'm down the road. He
Oh,
says,
really?
never, ever bring an Indian from another reserve onto this property. And Chief James was a really nice guy.
I didn't know that.
He was a really nice gentleman. He said, you'll lose your contract. I won't be the chief anymore if you do anything stupid like that again. And
Oh,
one of the hardest things I ever had to do is explain to Bob at the end of the day why he wasn't working the next day. And it was really tough for me. And he kept saying, well, didn't I work hard enough, Mike? Didn't I work hard enough? And I said, Mike, he said, Bob, no, it's a thing. So I don't call it racism anymore. I call it tribalism.
Yeah, well, that's nothing to do with his work ethic.
And
It's just, it's just
my
tribal
father,
rules, I guess.
with
Yeah.
our family, got a history of going right back to where they had the pipeline of black people coming out of the States through Salt Spring Island. My grandfather threatened to close the mines because he owned all the animals in there. If you didn't start treating the black people better, if I hear you calling them a nigger or so-and-so, I'm taking my animals out of the mine. You explain to the mine owner why the mine isn't making any money.
Yeah.
I won't be explaining. You'll be explaining. You call them Mr. So-and-so or we shut it down.
Yeah.
So that to me, racism is more tribalism. It's just like in you go over the Caucasus and the Balkans and that. Every time you go over another mountain, there's another group of people who speak a little bit different dialect. And the worst thing I ever heard was I went out with a girl one time, and she was a Croatian, and her uncle was a whatever. They were fighting over there all the time, and they had a family meeting, and she had an uncle that said to her, "Whenever I see that Croatian face of yours, I could just cut your throat."
Oh, jeez.
And so there's
Yeah.
nothing to do with Indians or white people. It's just that thing that people have. It's tribalism.
Yeah.
And it's really a bad news thing. It's just like right now in Hungary, they've got the Orban, or his name is. He's the prime minister there, and he's probably one of the worst racist Nazis. He tries to get away with it by saying he doesn't want a clash of civilizations. That's the way he puts it, a clash of civilization. And I've got Hungarian blood in me. My father's mother was born in Budapest, and I'm always embarrassed. Like when those people first coming to Hungary a few years ago, and I've seen a lot of those citizens out there kicking women and children, trying to come over, kicking them, not helping them, not trying to. And I could give myself all kinds of accolades. I'm supporting a whole family right now in Poland that have just been refugees there.
Yeah, it's
I
terrible.
found out who they were, and I just went one-on-one. And they're lovely people, and they just don't understand why anybody that doesn't know them will send them money every month.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why other people don't send them money every month if they can afford it.
Well, I don't understand myself personally. I don't understand why did Russia invade the country to start with? Because of just and I think just of one man, Mr. Putin. That's my take.
There
on it.
is no difference between Putin and Trump.
Wow.
As far as I'm
They're not
concerned-
people, Mike.
No, they're not.
No,
They're
not
not.
people.
Here's another thing that really gets me is I've got a cousin in the States. He's so far to the right, he almost fell off the end of the earth. And he's an educated man, but he's a complete idiot, educated idiot. And I said, just think about it this way. Are you a patriot or not? He said, of course I am. I says, well, you take a guy like John McCain. John McCain was shot down.
Oh, yeah.
John McCain spent 5 years in a pit in the
prison.
ground where people pissed on him and a lot worse. When he came out, he was almost dead. He had fractures in his arms, his legs, his collarbone. His teeth were rotten right at the gum line. He was in a pit. He refused to leave before his time, even though his father was an admiral. Okay? Now, Trump said about him, oh, he's a loser. He got shot down.
I heard
I
that,
like
yeah.
winners. And then explain to me why people from the American Legion would back Trump. Explain that to me.
I know, I don't understand it, Mike. There's so
I'd
many.
like to really, not that I can afford to lose it, but I'd like to give them a piece of my mind.
Well, I'm not a redneck by a long shot. I like to, kind of sort things out and find the good and the bad in most stuff. But I have a lot of difficulty with trying to find any good in Trump. I'll tell you that right now, and a lot less.
I forget the name of it. Bill
personally.
Browder. He wrote 2 books, and I just finished the second one. And it's just all explained. I'll have to give it to you to read because it just explained how ridiculous it is. And that book talks about the Soviet Union and how Putin gets away with murder.
Oh, that's right. Of course,
same as Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
But it also says as much about the United States system, especially Republicans, senators and things that are on the takedown there,
Oh.
different lawyers. I mean, you talk about they go beyond being a traitor. It's all there. It's all the information is there.
But you know what, Mike? We got a lot of the same crap going on in our own country. They just haven't got caught yet.
Well, I'm still
Myself
waiting. I'm
personally, I
still
think.
waiting for Brian Mulroney to explain where that suitcase full of money came from. And his explanations, he didn't know where. First of all, he's evasive. It's not where it come from. It's what he should have done with it. Now, as a lawyer, you'd think he would know what to do with money, right? Maybe put it in a trust account or something. And he was being bribed by the fellow from Germany and all that money kickback. I mean, then he had the audacity to sue the Canadian government and win $2 million.
Oh,
How do you like them for apples?
yeah.
And why don't we review that? Now, one thing more, and while I'm on a rant, it really pisses me off that when we watch the news and the CBC and all the rest of it, we never get a chance to hear what other leaders are saying. Now, for instance, Fidel Castro, okay? Now, he was never one for a lack of words, right?
No, he wasn't.
Why
no.
don't they get a good interpreter and say, this is an excerpt, or these are excerpts, fair excerpts, from what he said? And then let's hear it. Let's hear it. Why don't we ever hear? Now, even the crazy little man from North Korea, what did he say?
Oh, the little fat fuck.
Like, what did he say? What did he say?
Oh,
Or anybody. Let's hear what they have to say. We'll decide whether we believe him or not. We'll decide whether we have a point to make. But why do we never get any input from the other side? It doesn't seem to me that it's neither informative nor is it democratic.
Yeah. Well, you know what, Mike? We might differ on this, but I do like to follow word politics to a certain extent. And I'm not really, I don't follow politics that close personally because it just wants to make me throw up a lot of it. But we don't seem to be paying enough attention to what's going on in our own bloody country. That's what's happening, I think, to a lot of us, the stuff that's happening. My estimation, and I've God help me, I might say something wrong here, but
Say whatever you want.
I think the last really good guy that had this country in good shape and had it going where it was supposed to go was, oh Jesus.
Louis Laurent?
No. What's his name?
Tell me anything about it and I'll get it. And this
Back about 10 years ago. Not Brian Mulroney.
Harper?
Stephen Harper.
We certainly do disagree because I think he's just a two-faced liar.
Okay.
And on his best day, so you can see where politics enter in. One thing about Mr. Harper that I remember very well is I owned about $1 million worth of oil trusts, and they were paying huge dividends. And he would always say, "Oh, oil trusts are a utopian situation because old age pensioners can rely on a very, very, very handsome return. It's money creating jobs within Canada in the energy business. We'd never touch it." A year later, and this was in The Economist, his excuse about screwing up the oil trust was it would have cost Canada $30 million in taxation if he didn't do it. It cost the owners of those trusts $30 billion.
Okay. But in the other case, we had that.
The trust went in half the next day.
But then again, the other side of the coin, Mike, is we had that bubbling old idiot Diefenbaker, that when they built the best jet plane that's ever been built in the world, the Arrow.
Yeah.
And he got a lot of pressure from the States because we outdid did them so bad that they didn't want Canada to produce the airplane because of, that's the take I get. I mean, I don't know the whole inside story, if that's true or not. So he took the plans and tore them up.
I'll tell you.
I find that hard to believe. Like,
You know what?
we have people
I
doing
always
that kind of stuff.
come back to President General Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Yes.
One of the last things he said when he left office, and he could be easily researched, is the biggest problem, the biggest concern of the American people is not communism. It is the American military-industrial alliance.
Oh, yeah. Well, I would say so. Yeah,
That's what he said. And right now, to be fair, I'm kind of glad they got a good military-industrial alliance for the Ukraine's sake, because of those weapons there. You know I've got a military background, don't you?
Pardon?
You know I have a military background.
Well, I didn't know that. That's a shock to me.
Well, I was a major screw up.
Oh, well, that was the screw up army. I'm not familiar
But
with
you know, I'll tell you one thing. I was in the infantry, and I'll tell you those weapons they got now, but they can send a drone up, and you don't see it. It's something like a mosquito, and it can send the coordinates back to those sophisticated guns and dialed in. They can hit. You could be standing waving a flag in front of the legislative buildings in Victoria, and they can hit you.
Oh, there's no. Well, it's like right now, I would say the United States right now has got half a dozen submarines sitting in the North Atlantic, and we're getting off the subject a little bit here, I think. But anyway, in the North Atlantic, and I bet you every submarine, those ballistic submarines with those ballistic missiles, every one is pointed at Russia at some major sin, and all they get is the word is go in the whole country. We're into World War III again.
If you look at it objectively and analytically, there's the United States and to a slightly lesser degree the UN, and they've got two problems, and three problems actually. North Korea, which I don't even pay attention to because they've been saying the same thing for 50 years, what they're going to do. And the other one, of course, is China and Russia. Now, to sit back and supply the Ukraine with some very, very sophisticated weapons is good for the UN and the United States. And this sounds mercenary, but this is the way it is, true life. The more Russians gets defeated, the happier the United States and the UN are.
Oh, of
whether
course.
they admit it or not.
Of course.
Because
Yes, no, I admit that.
Then
Of course
China has to do really research and think, are we biting off more than we can chew?
Yeah. Well, I think right now, myself, a little bit I read about it, China financially is in tough shape right now. They're kind of a bit of a recession right now, you know.
That goes right back to the news media again. Is it true? You know that is it true? No, you can say they're in tough shape, and then you'll see a statistic that 70% of the people that are in the Canada, United States can't write a check for $500 unless they borrow it or put it on the credit card.
Yeah.
So who's in bad shape?
Yeah.
So I got one question for you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Feel free to interrupt and say anything you
go
want.
ahead.
It's your day. Okay. Now, if you were to, the old story, if you were to do all over again.
My life?
Yep.
Wouldn't change a damn thing.
Not even the time you got thrown in jail?
No, that was an experience. No. You know what, Mike? You know, that's a lesson learned in life, going through life.
Yeah.
It's through the growing up process to becoming a complete lunatic to being a good person. Well, I always consider myself a pretty good person because I always in my life respected my elders. If I didn't, I used to get a whack on the side of the head from somebody.
Yeah.
But I always respected my elders. I always respected my parents.
Upside. You used to do that. Upside, the old blues term.
But no, I would not change a heck of a lot, Mike. Something, maybe tweak it a little bit, fine tune it, but never go off the course.
Well, yeah, you got thrown in the can for punching a cop, and I always when the police come.
Well, that's what they're for, isn't it?
Well, when you know, here's the way I look at with the police coming for you. They've got all the cards, plus the joker and the box they came in. So I'm a complete pacifist. I go along with it, and I've got the theory that they're doing their thing, I'm doing my thing.
Yeah.
Be nice.
Well, they weren't nice to me. Like, by the time they chucked me in the black of the police car, all I had on was my fucking shorts. They had all my clothes ripped right off.
Still mad.
Yeah, I'm mad about that. They've got my clothes back, Mike.
Yeah. I'll tell you one story. One story that happened to me. I was a young guy. I got thrown in the Huskow, as they used to say. And they gave me a brand new blanket and a brand new pillow. And but I saw things in there that weren't right. I saw an old man that come in there, and I guess he got his pension check, went down to the palace, and he had one too many. And they roughed him up. An old man on a pension, they roughed him up. He wasn't offering any resistance. They roughed him up. And geez, that made me mad. And then a girl came in there, a woman, and she was not very bright at all. And they verbally abused her, and they pushed her around. And she wasn't offering any resistance. So I thought, fuck this, excuse my French. I'm bilingual, you know. And so I said, that's not right. And I went to the press about it. And the first thing the RCMP did is deny, deny, deny.
Yeah.
And then they knew that I had it by the shorts. And they said, oh, well, you know, we don't have the facilities and we don't have the training and we
Oh, yeah.
and then they molded that into getting a brand new police station.
Yeah.
And I said to them, and I said to the press, I got letters on file saying, you know what, that should be the Mike Gogo local jail, because I'm the one that caused that to be rebuilt.
Yeah.
But you know, I could have said to the guards, look, I'll go along with this shit because you're treating me good, and you're giving me all nice clean stuff and that. But no, I said that's we don't want to run this like a Mexican jail. This isn't Canada. This isn't what 2 generations of people died for in a field.
That's right.
Is it?
No. Well, you know, to me, that episode at Parksville, we got fighting with the cops there, and it was Monday morning come around, and I'm a superintendent on a job on the North Island Highway this time, putting the road from Sayward into Port Hardy on the new highway, inland highway. And of course, the crew's all there, everybody going to work, and where's the superintendent? Well, somebody got upset. Well, the fucker, he's in jail in Parksville. What do you think he is? So, I mean, the company was not really, what you'd say, receptive to that part of my life, but they put it up with me for many years after that and kept moving me up the ladder, so I guess I must have done something right.
Guess what? Guess what? I forgot one funny thing. We got time for one more funny thing. Okay, now in Nanaimo in the old days, everybody knew everybody, right?
That's right.
And the first time I realized that it changed when I got in the ferry and I didn't know anybody. It never happened before. Now there was some police around Nanaimo, and these guys have long since gone, and they didn't do anything wrong. But there was one of the guys, and he was there was 2 cops here, and they were both about 300 pounds. And that was provincial police, was it not?
That's correct. Yes,
and
sir.
there was 2 cops, and there was Starr and Calhoun.
Calhoun is
And they were about 300 and change, these guys. And they would go down the CPR ferry, and the walk off, you walk off there, passenger would walk off, then look at everybody. And hey, you, stand over there. Hey, you, stand over there. And they'd go, what's your name? What's your address? Where are you going?
Yeah.
Why are you going there? If they didn't like the answers.
Back on the ferry.
Or, what would they do? Kick their ass.
Oh yeah, kicked her out. Yeah.
That's right.
No, it was Calhoun. He was quite a guy. Just
I gotta tell you, this story is so funny. I'll try to make it short as I can. I had gone out of town to get a job, and I wanted to marry this girl, this Russian girl named Marie Plotnikov. Okay, Duke of Bar girl. But I didn't have any money, and there was no jobs around Nanaimo. That was a real tough time then. There was just nobody hiring. So we went up to the interior to get a job up there, and they weren't doing anything there because it was a really wet spring. The aero dams were just starting to be built, but they weren't started yet. So came back to town, and she had some misinformation about my conduct up there, which actually wasn't true for a change. And so she decided that she didn't love me anymore. So I was going up there with the greatest pal a guy could ever have. His name was Gerald Patrick Weedmeister Jr., known as Wino. He had to be the funnest guy in the world. He was 24-hour good humor, this guy.
okay.
So we came back to Nanaimo. We were down at the Palace, and we got a skin full of beer. And I decided that at 11:30 was kicking out time. Their old Les Mata shop, kicking out time. So I said, Wino, we got to go down to Marie's place, down the corner. And we got her dad's got a ladder behind the house. So I'm going to go up to the second floor where her bedroom is, and I'm going to play Romeo and Juliet. I'm going to knock on the window and see if she comes to the window. So she came to the window, and
you're a sick man.
Wina was holding the ladder, and we were reconciling pretty fair there. And then all of a sudden, her mother, as she heard me doing something or saying something, and she got this big mop, big Russian woman. and she got this mop, all of the thing, and she come back like a Sir Lancelot, hit me right in the mouth with this big old mop, knocked me ass for a tea kettle off the ladder, right on top of poor Wino. And we're sitting there, really, like if we weren't drunk, we'd have probably been broken half.
Oh yeah,
Because you
no
become
question.
so invaluable when you're cornered.
Yeah.
Anyhow, she phones the cops, and they're right around the corner. The police station's only 2 blocks away. So up comes Star and Calhoun. They look at the situation. We're laying on the floor, on the ground, moaning and groaning, all covered with mud and blood. And they start laughing, and they can't stop. They just can't stop. And finally they said, "You two bloody hillbillies, get in that car of yours and get up the mountain where you belong.
Yeah.
We'll run you in."
Yeah.
And that was the cops then, eh?
Oh yeah. I guess. I remember.
That would be impaired driving, breaking and entering.
I remember one time in Nanaimo we used to go to Ladysmith to the dances because they had good dances at Ladysmith Community Hall at one time. We used to go to the dances there. We come back there one night from the dance. We're all pretty well liquored up, a bunch of us guys, the guys and women with us. And we always used to go to the Shasta Cafe. Remember the old Shasta Cafe? You remember what's? It's just up the street, up and across from the Royal Bank, right on the corner.
Yeah.
There's still a little restaurant there. And we always used to, and we pulled in there one night, and you just put the parking meters in the Nanaimo, city of the Nanaimo. They put the parking meters in. So we get out, we're all going to the Shasta to have something to eat, and we're feeling pretty good. And I happened to have a big chunk of rope in the back of my car. And out of just being a little bit stupid, I leaped out of my car, went around, got the trunk, grabbed the rope, tied it to my bumper of my car, and lashed it to the parking meter. And then I thought, well, I'll just go and have something to eat. And I just go to make a move to go and get something to eat, and I hear across the street from the shadows, "Hey, young Fagan." There's this 300-pound cowboy Calhoun. Like, God, I can hear that if in my sleep at night sometimes.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness gracious. Those are such good times.
Talking about Ladysmith and good dances down there, my brother Ronnie gave me some advice one time. He's quite a bit older than me, 18 years older than me, and he's the love of my life. But anyhow, he's gone now, very sadly. But he told me when I was just starting to feel my oats, he said, you should go hang around Ladysmith. There's beautiful girls there.
That's why I
he
went
said,
there.
I'll tell you why, because a lot of Swedish loggers, they got their daughters in that, and the Swedish people are very, very, very good looking people.
Yes, they are.
My son David told me he played in Sweden, and there was 5,000 people in the audience, 3,000 were women, and 2,900 of them were gorgeous.
Yeah.
They are.
Oh yeah,
So
they
anyhow,
are good looking people.
We all know Lonnie Anderson, right? Not Lonnie Anderson, but what's her name? From Ladysmith, What's her
Lonnie
name?
Anderson?
Pamela Anderson.
Oh, Pamela. Yeah,
Pamela Anderson.
Pamela Anderson,
And
yes.
by the way, I worked with her dad when we were 18 at Knitnat.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
and
kidding.
she's a beauty. And
Yeah.
so she always comes up every year and buys a Christmas tree.
She's a well-endowed lady.
That's an asset.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
That's what you call Vista Vision.
Have you anything semi-intelligent to add to this conversation?
Well, not really. I just when we talked about Swedish girls, when we lived in the Queen Charlotte during the war, and my dad was up there and lived at Port Clements. I had a Swedish girlfriend, Astrid Grafström,
Yeah.
and I was really interested in her, but I was more interested in her dad because he had a fish boat, eh? And I like fishing, and it was called the Osprey. I don't know why do you remember things like that? And when I went to school there, we had one classroom in the Charlottes, one teacher, one heater in the room, a wood heater that was up to the pupils to keep the heater going when you were in school, and have the wood in the school when we were there. That was during the war.
The three most beautiful women I've ever seen. One was in Rome, right at the Vatican. I was there, and there was outside, there was just so many tourists. And one thing I really was surprised about is how many Muslims there was in the Vatican. They were everywhere.
Oh, really?
And I thought, what's this about? So I stopped talking to guys. Excuse me, I said, I was raised in Catholicism, but I've noticed a tremendous amount of Muslim people here, and I don't know why. And he said, well, it's because Christ was a great prophet. He's a great part of our religion, a great prophet. And that's why we're here. And I didn't know that. You see?
No, I didn't know that.
And because I wasn't taught that. But one more. Oh, by the way, there was a woman come by in an ethnic outfit. She was like, I don't know what she was. Some kind of a Caucasus mountain type
Yep.
thing. She had her ethnic outfit. Just stunning. And the other two were in Cuba. There was one girl walking along in Havana. I saw her, and another one that worked at this club, and I stay at their resort, and she's just absolutely unbelievably gorgeous. And I used to tell her that. I said, if you lived in North America, you would be the greatest model in the world. And of
Yeah.
course, she just laughed and said, oh yeah, right. But she really was just incredibly beautiful, because when you get that mixing, you get that mixing.
Yeah, yeah.
Or as our friend in Hungary
Blending,
say,
Mike. They call it
clashing of the cultures.
blending, Mike.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
just beautiful, beautiful people.
Yeah. Speaking of all that kind of stuff, one more.
Okay.
When I went to my cousin, I'm like Catholic, and my cousin Pat is in town. He's the one affiliated with the bathtubing and all. I don't know if you've heard of the Fagans. We're all related. Anyway, Pat and I used to serve mass at the old church on Wallace Street years and years ago. Many, many years ago. Well, I'm 92 now, so that's a long time ago. And I wasn't very old. I was serving mass. Anyway, always try to get the first mass in the morning. And we'll get the first mass. Get rid of the garb, tear out of there, and you went down to the next corner. And Rummings had a pop factory there. Used to make all the pop and this a distributing warehouse, all 7-Up and the Coca-Colas and the Orange Crushes. Leap over the fence, steal a bottle of pop, put it in the carrier of our bike, go down and ride our bikes down to Departure Bay, get up in the hills, sit there and smoke cigarettes and drink pop all day. That was our big Sunday.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
Those were the times. Those were the
Oh,
times.
it was.
Well, and I'll say one more thing. If this goes on and on, I realize. But the mayor Pete Maffeo.
Yes, sir.
He was a gem.
Jeez.
And I said to my father one day, I said, that Maffeo is such a wonderful man. He said, you know why? And I said, no. He says, because his parents died of the plague way back when. And he was an orphan. And he was adopted and treated very well. And he always had a sympathy for kids.
Yeah.
When we were kids in the convent school, about every 2 weeks, he would show up, and that was called Davenport ice.
That's correct.
Nobody had the refrigerator.
That's right. Just
So
ice boxes.
He'd show up, and there's like 300 kids in that school. He'd show up with boxes and boxes and boxes of what you'd call it a nut dip. They had the ice cream and they had dipped in nuts, and he'd show up there and all the stuff for the kids. And I would say, we're having trouble with the refrigeration, so we got to get rid of it anyhow. There was no problem with the refrigeration.
No, he's a good person.
And he was one of the guys when the Harlem Globetrotters came to Nanaimo and they couldn't get into a hotel, Abe Saperstein and all, he would let them stay at his place. He would be sleeping on the floor. He'd make them this giant spaghetti and meatballs. Yeah. One of the nicest people, the best mayor. If he hadn't hurt himself in that accident at the curling thing,
mayor.
He'd still be mayor, wouldn't he?
Yeah. If you remember his place where he used to live up there in the middle of town there, right? And he had that big fish pond in front of his house.
Yep.
I mean, because I used to walk by there every day from Bradley Street to John Shaw High when I was going to school there. And when I see all that, someday I see this. One day I went there and I stopped and I took some fishing gear with me and I was fishing. Pete's catching Pete's trout. Pete, he did. I thought he was going to kick my ass, but he didn't. He just told me. I think he called me a snot-nosed kid and told me to get the hell out of his fish pond.
I'll tell you this. You see, we're playing off each other now. We're playing off each other. But I remember one day in church. I was probably 10 years old. And we used to have this Wednesday church called Novena. Do you remember Novena? On Wednesdays, we had it at school. So anyhow, we went there at 11 o'clock, and I don't know, I got the flu. And I'm sitting in church, and you're getting up, kneeling, getting up, kneeling. Yeah. And I thought, I'm getting, more and more bilious all the time. And I thought, geez, I'm going to get sick, but I can't get sick in school, in church, and I can't leave. You just can't get up and leave. Of course you can.
Yeah, of course
but,
you can.
we were, worried about that. You get in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
You walked out in the middle of Mass. What kind of a Catholic are you?
Yeah.
And so anyhow, I just went on until I couldn't stand any longer. So I got up, and as I got up, I just hurled right onto the back of the neck of the guy behind me. Just projectile vomit right onto him. And I thought, and so I left there. And I thought, none followed me out. And I thought, boy, I should get to beat me with a cane. And she said, "Oh, Michael, you got sick and that." And she took me out to the fish pond. That's what got me out going.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Got a hose, washed me
Wash
all
it
off
off.
my clothes, washed me all, washed my mouth, everything else. And,
Yeah.
"Are you feeling better now? Are you dizzy? Are you got a headache?" No. And so that I didn't get any trouble about that, but
yeah.
I thought I was going to get it was the end of the world, right?
Yeah. Well, things are, you live in that era and you see what's going on in the world today, and it just boggles, when you really sit and think about it, it actually boggles your mind a little bit. Just where are we going? What is going to happen to us? Like, I just feel so sad for the younger generations that are coming up after I leave. What's going to happen in this world because of people with bad ideas, leaders that are doing such strange things to the world, and all this bad stuff that's going. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of good stuff going on. A lot of good stuff, medically wise, and a lot of things are happening. It's made it so much better for people, but there's just still so much bad stuff happening.
That reminds me almost verbatim that they were saying the exact same thing as we're saying now in ancient Greece. Same thing. What's with this generation that's coming up?
Yeah, I don't know what to project, Mike, or what to say, but I'm 92, and I won't, I'm not going to be here that much longer, maybe another 10 or 15 years, but man, I had quite a few conversations with Jimmy Patterson because I worked for Hyundai after I retired from the construction. I worked for Hyundai a little bit, doing some things for them. That's where I met Jimmy Patterson.
Okay.
Very interesting man.
I got two Jimmy Pattersons.
Very laid back. Talking to Jimmy Patterson is just like talking to you guys. Same thing.
Two Jimmy Patterson stories. One is I had a girlfriend whose girlfriend cooked for him on his ship, on his yacht.
Yeah.
And she said, everything had to be everything is fine, no problem. But if there wasn't going to be anybody around, just him and a few guys, all he wanted to eat was I was telling you before was tuna salad.
Tuna salad, yeah.
Yeah, that way, like the tuna, not the salad, but the tuna with the noodles.
Tuna noodles, that's what it was.
Yeah, casserole.
Yeah.
That was his thing. He couldn't get enough of the casserole. Yeah.
The tuna casserole, that's what it was,
Yeah, and a friend of mine actually drives him around in the plane. He's ex-RCMP, and he takes them for plane rides. And he said about 2 or 3 years ago, there was Jimmy and what's the name of the guy again? He's got the Berkshire Hathaway. He's the second richest guy in the world. You know what I mean? He's from Omaha. Those two were in the back of the plane. And he just got up to see if everything was okay. If they wanted something, they were both.
Well, I can't.
Making $10 million between going from here to there.
Yeah. Well, that thing, all these people making all this money. What's that young guy? 39 years old, or is it 39? 39 years old. He got $390 billion. One person. He always has more money than all of Canada. What's his name? Musk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unrealistic. It's hard to analyze, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, you
But
get
I'm not complaining.
You get the right ideas, and you get some money behind you, and you get some good people. A lot can happen in a short period of time.
Well, Mike, I had some good ideas, and I've got $350 million.
But you know what? I'm going to tell you something because I know you can make a certain amount. And I'll say this, and you can poo-poo it all you want. I would not want to be a billionaire.
No.
Money needs constant management, and it's a lot of work.
But don't get me
Being
wrong.
rich is as easy as you think,
I know, and don't get me wrong. I'm quite
I'm
happy.
just kidding.
No, I'm
I
happy the way I am. I got a good life. I got 3 good kids, and I got some great grandchildren, and got good friends and stuff like that. So, what the hell more do you want?
That's right.
Got a guy
that's
at your
right.
house, takes your picture, listens to all your bullshit.
The old
That's
Italian,
good
the
stuff.
old Italian adage is that we all play chess, but after the game's over, everything, the king and the pawn go in the same box.
Yep, that's right. Everybody ends up in the same box, Mike. You bet they do.
Well, Mr. Fagan,
Yeah, thank you, Michael.
I'm glad that we met
yeah.
because I was running out of old farts.
Yeah, you bet. And I'll thank you, Paul, for coming and doing this. It's appreciated, I guess.
All right, thanks.
As long as it doesn't make the local newspapers, because I've been there and that one, and most of the time it wasn't good.
We are the owners of the chattels in the bellywick, so
Yeah.
we can do what we want.
Yeah.